Item 6, the deputation, painting of the jetty handrails. Eric Kotz, if you're here, if you've got to come up, please. And remind you that you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, councillors. I think we all know each other. Fiona, I don't think we've met, perhaps. I represent a loose group of about 100 community members that reported to me, left their names, willing to offer their services as volunteers for the project I suggested. We have no formal title or association. We're just locals that are frustrated at the lack of opportunity to volunteer our services for cost-saving maintenance work on our Tumby jetty, namely the simple painting of the very shabby wooden stanchions and safety rails. Our offer was for all labour and materials to be donated. It's a nil cost exercise. When I wrote to all elected members, and in my email, and I did ask that all elected members see that email, I'm not sure that happened, I sought permission to undertake this work. I received a single paragraph reply from the Works Manager stating, "The Council appreciates the intent of your proposal, although unfortunately it is not one that we are able to approve." It followed on. Under Safe Work Australia definitions, work with a risk of falling greater than 2 metres or that is carried out in or near water that involves a risk of drowning is defined as high risk. This definition applies to marine structures such as jetties when works are being undertaken. In considering their duty of care to workers, which includes volunteer workers and the general public, the Council cannot accept that defined high-risk work is suitable to be undertaken by volunteers. I received no response at all to my offer in the email to put forward a presentation about this at the time. No response at all. And I wanted to do a presentation to the elected members, not to staff. Getting here tonight has taken 3 tries and 8 weeks. Nobody in their right mind, of course, accepts that work involving simply painting a jetty rail could be interpreted as high risk. I haven't seen anybody yet that sees a high risk in that. Through my past association with Kinhills, KBR Engineers, I got some contacts and got through to the Information Officer of Advisory Services with Safe Work SA. Harder than you think for a layman to get through to this person. Samuel, they don't have surnames, I can understand that. I asked him to reply in writing, which he has, so I have a copy of that here. As I expected, I already knew I have accreditation in working at heights after a pretty solid background in that. I already knew that high risk definition only applies to construction activities, and his written reply confirms that. I have his written reply. In part it says, painting the pillars, he means posts, I've got to stick here, would not be considered construction work, as it would be that construction work, in line with Regulation 289, does not include testing, maintenance or repair work of a minor nature carried out in connection with a structure. That's it. It's regarded as a minor nature, it's maintenance work, and if it was high risk, you wouldn't be doing maintenance on it. He also advised, and this is important, if a perceived risk cannot be eliminated, as required by Regulation 36, the risk needs to be minimised so far as reasonably practical. They can't knock back a job because there is a risk. They expect you, and that's fair enough, to take all reasonable precautions. In my discussion with Sam, I offered that there would be no ladders will be used. 70% of accidents in South Australia they handle are from ladders. We would not need a ladder. He asked, would the jetty platform be stable and safe? I said, I can guarantee that. He said, how can you do that? I said, you blokes have just checked it out a few weeks ago and passed it when we opened the jetty. The same applied for the safety railing on both sides of the jetty, and I'm only talking about going up as far as the swimming steps are, because I know on one side from there on there are no safety rails, so we're only talking about that section. It is recently approved, again by WorkSafe South Australia, safety railing on both sides of the jetty where painting work would be undertaken. I offered through my business to supply a fall arrest system and edge protection devices that we use all the time, and if they were required, the reply was it's totally unnecessary, which I knew when I offered. Well, I have total top level supervisory ability of working at heights accreditation, quite a course. Others have lifeguard qualifications that are volunteered. We also have a high degree of first aid training trained volunteers. So it got down to the only activity, the only requirement stopping this is that we need a PCBU, that's government jargon. Anybody in the building industry is familiar with the term these days of a PCBU, but for those that don't know what it is, it's a person controlling a business or an undertaking. Foreman, somebody like that. That person cannot be a volunteer. Obviously this has got an insurance implication. I can understand that. So here, with the application for us to go up and do that painting jetty, logic says that the PCBU should be a suitably employed and experienced council officer. So in short, I'm asking that if we get the volunteers and accepting the fact that we can be covered providing we have a PCBU from the council. That is the basis of my request tonight. I qualify that by saying that no doubt this is just the beginning of similar exercises statewide. Obviously the insurance angle is a big thing these days. But I noticed that other councils, like every night on the classified ads, I see an ad by the Broken Hill Council advertising a training day for people that want to be volunteers. Training, testing, accreditation. I can see that if we had such a day here, that would be a first step to getting hazard assessments out of the road. Could be pre-qualified. I also noticed that the Lower Air Council, just across the hills here, in the local paper, appealed for volunteers to help for the demolition work. Now, knocking down a building in Mother Coffee's, knocking down a club rooms out there, doing demolition to me is a lot higher risk than sitting on a milk crate painting a jetty post. So I request that council consider this and advise accordingly if someone's coming. If there's a reason tonight why we can't do this with a suitably supplied council officer, we won't be the last. It's obvious that this is going to keep happening, and I'm appealing to get something in train, like obviously Broken Hill have already done. They know that this is going to keep happening, and of course the logical thing is to be a member of an incorporated association. And I will state that we do, with my work for the Osprey Protection Society and out at Reesby and that, we do some horrible things, but we are allied to an incorporated body, and that is important. So I can hear what council will be thinking. Just join an incorporated body. We have a pool of labour here that won't be perhaps Lion Club members or Progress Association members, but there's a heap of people here, a pool of volunteer labour that we're going to lose if we can't get around this loophole. Just as a sideline, I looked up what WGA estimated that the work of painting of the jetty rails, replacing the jetty rails and all that, $245,000. That's to replace them. They're solid hardwood. Anybody go out and have a look at them, all they need to do, you wouldn't even sand it, you just flick it off with a scraper and paint it. If we can get another 10 years out of those, it'd be easily 10 years just by painting them. The allowance in the WGA estimate is ridiculous. It's $245,000. That's over $250,000 to replace those posts and the jetty rail. And that's only for half-life of the projected term of the exercise, and this is irrespective of whether we're repairing it or replacing it for the jetty. So they're saying $245,000 for the half-life, and then again, spend that in 12 years or whatever, 30 years time, 25 years time, spend that again. By doing an exercise like this, that gives us a bit of breathing space, saves us $245,000. So here, that was ridiculous. That should never have been accepted. Well, I don't think you had to accept that estimate, but it shows to me that some of those estimates were ambit claims. Any questions?
Any questions from Graham?
Do you mind? Yeah, do you mind if I ask? I'll start with what I'm hearing, that your definition of high risk is to the detriment of the volunteers, the risk that could come to them. But with a risk analysis, it does also include the other facets. How do you include those facets? So, for example, the environmental fallout, I think, would be considered by our works manager. I'm sorry to be speaking for him. So, as you just mentioned, the scraping and the sweeping would go straight into the ocean.
No,
we would imagine.
no, of course not.
The scraping of the paint, it needs to be assessed to see if it's lead-based paint. Those sorts of things. So those are considerations that were made when putting together the
I've
simplicity
talked
of this
to
project.
people that already do this, Christian, and said, how do you get around it? The simple way they do it often is to, if you can picture the square jetty post, you get a bit of 3-ply, you cut the profile out of that, catch it all on that, and most of them said we simply put down a drop cloth and pick up the flakes, and some of them, and it's quite a lot easier now than it's ever been, to get a 80 volt Makita vacuum cleaner and attach it to the scraper and suck it away as you go. Same as doing a chip rock ceiling.
I understand your frustration, Eric, in the suggestions that you've made, and I know that they're coming from a really good place, as we all would like to do it. Sadly, in this day, we can't do those kind of things. I'm wondering whether New South Wales have different legislation.
Why can't we do it? You said we can't, but you haven't said why.
We don't have, the regulations are just too onerous, and the responsibility actually comes back onto, if we allow activities that aren't covered insurance-wise or whatever, it comes back on our officers. It's their responsibility, monetary-wise.
Yes, I'm aware of that, and that's why I've accepted that, and it's covered by this person controlling the business undertaking. The minute you do that, anybody up there, and this is covered by the, excuse me while I look for it, but it's called the Volunteer Protection Act, it came out in 2002. And that basically says what I've been saying. If you're a member of an incorporated body, the person involved doesn't have to.
But you're actually suggesting not an incorporated body. Like you know, we have Progress Association, we have the Lions Club that are looking for volunteers. You know, my suggestion is if you have 100 volunteers wanting to do things, why are they not, you know, perhaps aligning themselves where, you know, they can, I think we need volunteers. That's good. I think it's part of our community. But legislatively and regulations-wise, it is becoming obvious. It's becoming beyond that. And I know that you mentioned Lower Air, and I know that they are facing the same situation, and they will become less and less because we just can't get past the onerous regulations that we have in doing this.
Well, I just pointed out tonight that we got knocked back for the fact that it's high risk, and Safe Work SA have accepted in writing that it's not high risk.
Well, you
They've got it.
You must have different people that we contact in Safe Work SA. I don't know. I can't.
Well, I talked to the gentleman was the information officer, and he was fairly senior, and he was charged. Well, his name. I have it here.
His name? Did you say? What did you say? It's famous.
No, his
What's
name is.
sorry.
I can understand he doesn't want to use his surname, and no doubt people here might even know what it is.
Yeah.
I said, can I ask what your name is, please? And I thought when he sent me the written reply, but he still just put
We are not alone. You know, every council is faced with these issues. We're not just an isolated council. It's just becoming harder and harder.
Yes, but you're becoming reactive. Why not look at why not say this is the problem, what's the solution? That's what I'm asking for tonight. We're all aware that councils face, it's not just us, it was the first thing I said, is the councils everywhere are facing this thing. I was obviously insurance premiums and all. I mean, God's sake, I work in the mining industry. It's a,
You have, Eric,
Mm.
but, you know, sadly, like that was 10, 20 years ago. And sadly, in that time, things have changed a lot. It's terrible. I don't think it's a good thing, from the volunteers' point of view. But from what we have to adhere to, I just think, I went through it all, looking at it the other night. I thought, what is it? What are the things that's holding us back? Is it insurance? And it's not just that. You know, it's all the other issues that we have to comply with. You know, thinking about the Christian just mentioned about having the you know, going into the sea. There are all those regulative bodies that we have to you know, satisfy as well. You would know that without.
I do, one thing, I spent a long telephone conversation with this gentleman and got him to throw up anything that we might have to address. One of them was what Christian's already brought up, and that was a reasonable thing, that was an environmental thing.
Yeah.
It was simply a matter of talking to people in the industry that do that all the time, and basically they say we just put a drop cloth around it like you do any other painting job, pick up the detritus and dispose of it or vacuum it off. I talked about the ladders and that sort of thing. One of the problems I had, and I'll mention it here now, given the opportunity, but he said, what if somebody falls in? Is there a life preserver to throw to them? And I said, no, there's not, effectively. On the Tumby Bay jetty, there's not an effective life preserver.
We had them in the past, I'm not sure where they are.
There's one there now.
Well,
If you're drowning, Julie, and I throw it out to you and I miss you, I can't retrieve it and have another shot. Just haven't got a rope on it. I mean, that's the most critical safety issue that we talked about. He was horrified. There's no rope on it.
Okay, so did you advise council of that? Did you notify council that was something?
I didn't advise, until I knew it was on safe ground and get the, it was no good coming up with this idea and then not having the volunteers.
No, I'm saying about not having a rope on the jetty. Like,
no,
how do we know that someone hasn't taken it? Like, you know, there is an obligation, I think, on us as ratepayers to notify. If you notice something that is not compliant, or, you know, then I think there's an obligation that we need to let council know, you know, where it's...
Well, I'm glad you pointed that out, because the last three safety issues I've raised with council in the proper form of channel haven't been responded to. They have not.
Well,
I raised the question about the danger.
I don't think we're going to go any further because it's
Okay.
not going to achieve anything.
We do have a reply, and that will be in a written format and it will be published. The information, some of the information you've given us is totally contradictory to the information we've got from the same department. So there's two lots of information coming out of WorkSafe SA. One saying in your terms that we can do it, and do it quite easily, and another one saying we cannot go anywhere near it. Right? So the whole aspect and everything you've raised tonight will be addressed, and you'll be notified in writing.
Yeah, effective.
I mean, as I said previously, if we could get that jetty fixed tomorrow at 100%, then I would be the first one to put my hand up saying let's do it. We are working on it. There's another report coming in tonight's meeting to address further problems or to address another situation. So if you'd like to stay, you'll hear about it. No?
No.
Oh, sorry, that's a compliment. Sorry. But you will obviously get to know about it.
Okay, thank you. I would point out that part of the reasoning behind this was, as a community, other than a couple of well publicised stunts, which were effective, but simply stunts, we haven't shown as a community. When we tried to suggested we raise money as a community, we were discouraged from doing that. And nobody can deny that. We were discouraged by the little group that was formed at the time. We were discouraged by council that it was too early to do that. Somebody went ahead and did it, of course. And now, every time we want to do something on that jetty, if we get discouraged now, we're all aware here tonight that it's not the council's fault or problem. I just want the council to say, instead of saying we can't do this, we can't do that, try finding a way that we can do it.
We are doing that.
Thank you.
You know, we've been on the phone to say, WorkSafe SA yesterday and yesterday, and the work we've been putting in the last 2 years, or nearly 2 years that I've been in this chair is astronomical. And you don't understand the amount of time and effort, the money these two here have put in. They've bent over backwards, and at least we've got the jetty open. To go out and then whinge and grizzle about the finer details, I think is very, very unfair.
I take offence at that.
I'm still talking.
I take offence
I think
at
it's
that.
I think it's very unfair on your part. We are trying to get the jetty into the best condition that we can, all right? So leave it with us and we will get what we can done.
Okay, if I can have the final say.
No, of course, yeah.
Okay.
You can. I just said you can.
I don't think you're trying hard enough. I think it's...
Okay. Thank you.
No, just sit down.
That's enough. Yeah. Thank you,
Bravo.
mate. That's enough, thank
Speaking
you.
to me.
We'll move on, thanks. Excuse me.
Excuse me, the CEO just spoke to me and I didn't hear what she said.
Ask you to sit down.
Thank you.